Jake was a single dad in his mid-30s, living in a small town just outside of New York. He worked long hours at a construction site, often juggling overtime to make ends meet. His 5-year-old daughter, Lily, was the center of his world. Her laughter was his reason to get up every morning. Money was tight, but Jake never complained. He believed that even if life wasn't easy, you could still be good to others. Kindness doesn't cost a dime, he used to tell Lily. But it's worth more than gold. One chilly Friday afternoon, Jake stopped by a small cafe downtown to grab a sandwich before heading back to work. It was one of those cozy little places with warm lighting, soft music, and the smell of coffee filling the air. He found a seat near the window and took out his worn lunchbox. As he unwrapped his sandwich, he noticed a woman sitting a few tables away. She looked well-dressed, elegant, confident, the kind of person who seemed to belong in a boardroom, not a tiny cafe. She was on the phone, laughing lightly, a plate of salad in front of her. Then suddenly, her laughter turned into coughing. At first, people thought she was fine until her face started turning red. She clutched her throat, panic spreading in her eyes. No one moved. The cafe froze. People stared, unsure what to do, but Jake didn't hesitate. He jumped from his seat and ran to her. "Ma'am, are you okay?" he asked, but she couldn't answer. Without another second of thought, he wrapped his arms around her and performed the Heimlich maneuver just as he remembered from a first aid video he'd once watched at work. After 2 firm thrusts, the piece of food flew out, and the woman gasped for air, trembling but alive. The entire cafe burst into applause. Jake smiled shyly and stepped back. "You're okay now," he said gently, handing her a napkin. The woman sat down, catching her breath, her eyes full of tears. You saved my life," she whispered. Jake shrugged it off. Anyone would have done the same. But deep down, they both knew not everyone would have. After she calmed down, the woman insisted on buying Jake lunch. He tried to refuse, saying he had to get back to work, but she was persistent. "Please," she said, her voice soft but firm. "At least let me say thank you properly." So he sat with her for a few minutes. Her name was Emily Carter. Though Jake didn't recognize it, she was actually the CEO of a major tech company, one of the youngest billionaires in the country. Emily asked about him, and Jake told her a little about his life, his job, his daughter, how he was just trying to give Lily a good life. There was no self-pity in his voice, just quiet strength and sincerity. Emily was moved. She couldn't remember the last time someone had treated her like a regular person. In her world of wealth and status, people usually wanted something from her. But Jake? He'd helped her without expecting a thing. Before leaving, Emily handed him her business card. "If you ever need anything," she said with a smile, "call me." Jake chuckled. "Thanks, but really, I'm just glad you're okay." And with that, he went back to work, thinking he'd probably never see her again. That night, Emily couldn't stop thinking about him. His kindness, his humility, it stayed with her. In a world where people were often too busy or too afraid to help, Jake's simple courage felt like something rare. Over the next few days, Emily had her assistant look into him, just to learn a little more. She found out he was a single father, living modestly, working long shifts, and never asking for help. A week later, Jake got a call he didn't expect. "Hi, Jake, this is Emily Carter, we met at the cafe." He smiled, surprised. "Oh, Miss Carter. How are you feeling?" "I'm doing great, thanks to you," she said warmly. "Actually, I was wondering if you'd let me treat you and your daughter to dinner. I owe you one." Jake hesitated, but when Emily mentioned Lily, his heart softened. "She'd love that," he said. That weekend, Emily met them at a small Italian restaurant. Lily, with her bright blue eyes and bouncy curls, instantly warmed up to Emily, asking her endless questions. "Are you a princess?" she asked shyly. Emily laughed. "Not exactly. But I do have a big office and a lot of people who work with me." Jake watched them bond and couldn't help but smile. It had been a long time since someone had shown genuine kindness to him and his daughter. As weeks went by, Emily kept in touch. Sometimes she'd drop by Jake's site with lunch. Other times, she'd invite them to the park or send Lily little gifts, a book, a backpack, a set of crayons. At first, Jake felt uncomfortable accepting anything. But Emily never made it feel like charity. She treated them like family. One evening, after a long day, Jake came home to find Emily waiting outside his apartment. She looked nervous. "Emily? What's wrong? She smiled softly. Nothing's wrong. I wanted to tell you something. They sat on the porch steps as the city lights flickered in the distance. Emily took a deep breath. When I met you, I was in a place where I'd forgotten what real kindness looked like, she said. I spend my days surrounded by people chasing money, power, and deals. But that day, you reminded me what truly matters. Jake was quiet, listening. You didn't see a billionaire that day, she continued. You just saw a person who needed help. And you saved me, not just physically, but emotionally. You made me believe in goodness again. Jake looked down, humbled. I didn't do anything special. I just did what I hoped someone would do for my daughter if she needed help. Emily smiled. And that's what makes it special. Over the next few months, their friendship deepened. They spent weekends together, taking Lily to the zoo, having picnics, laughing like old friends. But somewhere along the way, something more began to grow between Jake and Emily, something neither of them expected. For Jake, it was confusing. He was just an ordinary guy, and she was, well, extraordinary. But Emily didn't care about titles or money. She saw the man who'd risked everything for a stranger, the father who loved his daughter more than life itself. One evening, as they walked by the riverside, Emily turned to him and said softly, Jake, sometimes love finds us in the most unexpected places. He looked into her eyes, realizing she meant it. And for the first time in years, he allowed himself to hope. A year later, Emily and Jake stood together in the same café where they'd first met. This time, it wasn't a near tragedy, it was a celebration. The cafe owner had reserved the table for them, and little Lily was twirling in her new dress. As the three of them laughed, Emily reached for Jake's hand. Funny how life works, isn't it, she said. One small act of kindness, and here we are. Jake smiled. Guess kindness really does come back around. That day, Jake learned that kindness doesn't just change someone else's life, it changes yours too. He never expected anything in return, but life rewarded him in the most beautiful way possible. And Emily? She discovered that sometimes, the richest hearts don't come from wealth, but from compassion. So the next time you see someone in need, don't hesitate. Step forward. Be that helping hand, that comforting smile, that spark of hope, because kindness has a way of coming full circle, and you never know whose life, or heart, you might touch forever. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to your channel name for more heartwarming stories like this. And remember, a single act of kindness can change everything.